On December 18, Sergio Perez was finally dropped by Red Bull, exactly 4 years after he was announced as Max Verstappen's teammate. The team had been trying to remove him for the past 2 seasons, but why on earth did it take Red Bull, the team who kicks out the drivers like it's nothing, so long? To understand the core of the issue, it's worth recalling how Sergio became Verstappen's teammate. He was already an experienced driver who hadn't come through the team's development program. Red Bull rarely recruits drivers from outside their system. The last time this happened was in the early 2000s, and after Perez, the only other experiment was Nick de Vries. However, Sergio joined Red Bull during a particularly challenging period. The team needed a consistent second driver to score points, compete for the Constructors Championship, and support Verstappen in his quest for the title. The inconsistent Albon couldn't provide the necessary backing for Max. Having a second driver consistently in the top 5 would force rival teams to plan their strategies differently and consider alternative tactics. A strong teammate can hold off opponents or mislead them with longer or shorter stints, but this approach doesn't work if your only driver in the top 5 is the leader. By the end of 2020, Red Bull had exhausted their pool of juniors in the search for a reliable 2 for Verstappen. Gasly was trailing by a second per lap and sometimes an entire lap, while Albon frequently crashed, struggled in qualifying, and spent more time recovering positions than genuinely supporting the team. The talent pipeline in Red Bull's program had run dry. Perez, on the other hand, was left without a contract as Aston Martin had chosen Vettel, and, after his victory at the Sakhir Grand Prix, projected the impression of being at the peak of his form. That's how he ended up being signed as an established driver from outside the system, and it's clear he signed a standard F1 driver contract, not the traditional agreement that binds young talent to the entire Red Bull structure. Well, even standard contracts can be terminated or bought out. A recent example is Daniel Ricciardo's departure from McLaren after the 2022 season. However, the British team had to pay substantial compensation, up to $10 million, according to the most optimistic insider estimates. Perez couldn't afford to face a similar situation, and that's where his manager came in. Perez was represented by none other than Ayrton Senna's former agent, Julian Jacobi. A master of lengthy and complex contracts, filled with detailed clauses about sponsorships, early termination options, and protections against them. A maestro with over 30 years of experience, Jacobi is exceptionally skilled at securing lucrative deals for his clients, and Perez has no objective reason to simplify his exit or lower his demands. To grasp the full difference between Perez's deal and a standard Red Bull driver contract, we need only one glance at the Mexican social media profiles, which resemble a Times Square of personal sponsors. The rest of the team's portfolio sponsors rarely appear, apart from the title and most prominent ones. For the most part, Sergio primarily promotes his own partners. No previous driver in the team received such commercial freedom before winning championship titles or attaining undeniable superstar status. And even then, they typically became the face and flagship for promoting team partnerships. Moreover, Perez was aware that the team sometimes acts impulsively. An expert in such matters, Jacobi undoubtedly studied these scenarios closely and preemptively devised protective measures or compensation terms for his client. And indeed, the harshness of Dr. Marco's approach to juniors in the program is legendary. One could be dropped after just 2 or 3 poor races. The standards in Formula One are no less brutal. In recent years alone, drivers like Gasly and Kvyat were demoted mid-season to the Mini RB team. De Vries lasted only half a season, and Albon was ruthlessly relegated to the simulator despite achieving better results than Perez. Do you even remember poor Brendan Hartley? Even this year, Marco reminded everyone of his strict methods by dismissing the familiar and popular Daniel Ricciardo from the Mini Rick team after the 16th race. Though, according to Horner, Helmut had been eager to cut 3 as early as the 10th race. With such a strong contract in place, Perez was ready to perform. Perez joined Red Bull Racing in 2021, replacing Alex Albon and becoming Max Verstappen's new teammate. His debut season was filled with both triumphs and challenges. In the opening race, the Bahrain Grand Prix, he faced an early setback when his car unexpectedly shut down during the formation lap due to an electrical failure. However, Perez managed to restart the car in the pit lane and charged through the field to finish an impressive 5th. At the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, Perez secured his first victory with Red Bull and the second win of his Formula One career. Qualifying in 7th, he made a strong start and climbed to 2nd thanks to a well-executed strategy. When Verstappen's tire failed and Hamilton made a critical error at the restart, Perez took the lead and held on to claim a crucial win for the team. Throughout the year, the Mexican driver backed Verstappen in his push for the title and strengthened Red Bull's fight for the Constructors Championship. Overall, he scored 190 points, finishing 4th in the Drivers' Championship standings. In 2022, Perez played a crucial role in Red Bull's success with consistent performances. He often acted as a strong teammate to Verstappen. For instance, in the Spanish Grand Prix, Perez moved aside to let Verstappen take the lead, securing maximum points for his Drivers' Championship. At the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, Perez worked hard to slow down Hamilton, giving Verstappen an advantage in strategy and helping to seal another Red Bull's W. But Perez also had his own standout moments, like making history as the first Mexican driver to win the Monaco Grand Prix. Also that year, Red Bull finally ended Mercedes' streak and took home the Constructors' Championship. By the season's end, Perez could be considered a key player with his overall 305 points. He also battled for the runner-up spot until the final race, which ultimately went to Charles Leclerc from Ferrari. By the way, don't forget to subscribe to the channel as I'm working on a Charles Leclerc video already, and you definitely don't want to miss it. However, the 2023 season began with a bang. Wins in Saudi Arabia and Azerbaijan showed Perez was ready to fight at the top, even challenging Max at times. For a brief moment, we all dreamed of a real teammate showdown for the championship. But then, things started to unravel. Checo's struggles in qualifying became a recurring nightmare. Week after week, he failed to reach Q3, often starting far back on the grid. This left him fighting through the midfield on race day, burning tires and losing crucial points. Meanwhile, Verstappen was untouchable, dominating and pulling away in the standings. It seemed like Checo's driving style was completely out of place. Of course, Red Bull's 2023 car was heavily tailored to Verstappen's aggressive cornering approach, leaving Checo wrestling with the car. And the pressure didn't stop there. Red Bull's management, known for its relentless pursuit of perfection, began to turn up the heat on Perez. Helmut Marko, a key advisor to the team, publicly criticized Checo multiple times, suggesting that he might need a change of scenery to realize his potential. Rumors about replacements spread like wildfire. Despite the mounting pressure, Perez ended the season with 285 points, holding on to second place in the Drivers' Championship and securing Red Bull's first ever 1-2 finish in history. Though many speculated that the team was already considering alternatives, Red Bull decided to keep Perez for the next season, and for good reasons. Checo's wins in Saudi Arabia and Azerbaijan, plus his podium finishes, helped Red Bull build a massive lead in the Constructors' Championship. Replacing him mid-season could have disrupted their momentum during an absolutely record-breaking campaign. Still, any other Red Bull driver would have been fired twice already, and no contract would have saved them. However, Perez was more than just a driver at that point. He was representing Red Bull in Latin America. You can not just fire a guy like that and not see your sales plummet, and we'll talk about this in detail at the end of the video. Heading into 2024, the season began with glimpses of hope. Perez secured 4 podium finishes in the first 6 races. It seemed like he could reclaim his place as a reliable second driver for Red Bull, but the optimism didn't last. By the middle of the season, Checo's performance began to crumble. Qualifying remained his Achilles heel. Week after week, he failed to make it into Q3, leaving himself stranded in the midfield on race day. As a result, Perez was rarely in contention for wins or podiums during the latter half of the season. The numbers show it all. After his early successes, Checo managed just 49 points in the remaining races, averaging only 2.7 points per Grand Prix. In a car capable of dominating the Constructors' Championship, Perez's performances stood out as a weak link. The pressure on Checo was relentless, with Helmut Marko openly criticizing him, while mistakes on race days only made things worse. From misjudged overtakes to unnecessary penalties, Perez's races often turned into battles for damage limitation rather than opportunities to shine. Rumors of replacements swirled, with names like Liam Lawson and Daniel Ricciardo frequently mentioned as potential successors. By the end of the year, Perez had fallen to 8th in the Drivers' Championship, a result that would have been unthinkable at the start of the season. At that point, all team officials admitted this couldn't go on any longer. The pace at which Perez scored points for Red Bull was on par with the backmarkers, and that's no exaggeration. His average number of points by the end of the season dropped to just 1 point per race. Unsurprisingly, by the end of 2024, Red Bull abandoned the political correctness of previous years, verbal support, and promises to fix the situation. After the Las Vegas Grand Prix, Helmut Marko explained that a meeting will be held after the Abu Dhabi races to review the season's results, and shareholders will decide on the driver lineups for both teams next season. He noted that if Perez were closer in the standings to Hamilton, Russell, or other top competitors, Red Bull would already have a comfortable lead in the Constructors' Championship. Christian Horner added the team plans to analyze what went wrong and determine the best path forward. Despite Sergio's significant contributions to the team, the current situation is challenging for both Perez and Red Bull. Of all the parties involved, only Perez expressed confidence in continuing the partnership, though even Mexican media reported insider rumors about negotiations for a potential split. The main complication resolving the issue was the driver's $16 million salary for 2025. Reportedly, Red Bull considered either fully ending the relationship or keeping Sergio on the roster as an ambassador and show car driver. Allegedly, his contract doesn't explicitly specify what kind of cars they are obligated to provide him. The decision about his future with the team was eventually handed over to the company's shareholders. For the first time in the team's history, they were tasked with deciding a driver's fate. Their verdict was clear. Number 11 would leave the team. Sergio was protected not only by his contract, but also by a massive fan base in the Latin American market. Firing a wildly popular Mexican driver would theoretically result not only in the loss of sponsors and part of the audience, but also in a potential wave of dissatisfaction and anger from the interested public. A comparable example is the swift emotional reaction to Colapinto's successes. Imagine the reverse effect. This could even lead to something like a boycott of Red Bull products on the Latin American market. As such, this potentially risky decision for the entire company had to be reviewed by shareholders for the first time in the team's history of driver selections. They clearly required a thorough marketing analysis of the case and additional expertise, and probably took a while. For Perez himself, there was absolutely no reason to leave voluntarily. He had just signed a lucrative contract, expanded his pool of sponsors, and his father continued to build a political career based on his son's popularity. There were no appealing alternative seats in Formula One, so why agree to an exit without proper compensation? It was crucial for him to save face and maintain the image of a successful Red Bull driver, or to maximize his gain through pressure from management and the potential reaction of the audience. This explains Red Bull's highly conciliatory tone in all communications about the split. For example, Horner refused to frame it as a firing and hinted at the possibility of ongoing ties with the brand. According to Horner, Checo had decided to take a break, essentially a sabbatical from Formula One. At this point in Checo's career, moving to the Mini-Re team wasn't really an option. Everything was labeled as if it was Checo's decision, and Red Bull had nothing to do with it. Horner also said that Checo would stay involved with the brand and the team, but would no longer work as a driver. He added that it was sad to see Checo leave the team, and that Checo needed time to spend with his young family and think about his future plans. Basically, it was straight-up damage control. Some collaborations between Perez and the RB team will remain in place to minimize damage in one of their key markets. Now it's finally over. But was it all Perez's fault, or is just Red Bull who's now built a car that only Max can drive? I guess the truth likely lies somewhere in between. On the one hand, Perez's struggles, especially in qualifying, were impossible to ignore. Week after week, he found himself starting far from the front, battling midfield drivers, while Verstappen dominated at the top. And let's not forget Red Bull's car philosophy that didn't do Perez any favors in either 2023 or 2024. In 2023, Red Bull's RB19 was a dominant force, winning 21 out of 22 races. The car was designed with a focus on strong front-end grip, catering to drivers who prefer a responsive front axle. This design approach was well suited to Max Verstappen's driving style, as he favors a car that is on the nose, delivering sharp and responsive turns, even if it results in rear instability. For the 2024 season, Red Bull introduced the RB20, which evolved from the RB19. However, it was operating on exactly the same principles as RB19, meaning responsive front again. Max Verstappen thrived with the RB19 and RB20 designs, as the car's characteristics complemented his preference for a pointy front end and a willingness to manage a more unstable rear. In contrast, Perez's driving style is less compatible with a car that has a very responsive front end and a less stable rear, making it more difficult for him to match Verstappen's performance levels. This mismatch became more apparent as the 2024 season progressed, with Perez acknowledging that the car's issues were more pronounced with his driving style. What ultimately sealed his fate, however, was Red Bull's obsession with Max. They were building a car tailored for him, and it was easier for them to find another driver than build and test two different cars. Sergio's lucrative contract, the marketing value of his massive Latin American fan base, and his role in securing critical points early in the season made the decision to part ways more complicated than usual. But in retrospect, I think an earlier departure from Red Bull might have benefited both parties. However, The real question is, with his current statistics, can you still see Checo making a strong comeback in Formula 1? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe.